Well, good cold New England evening tonight, folks. Good to have you in the stream. It's about, actually, we've had a major warm up here. We've gone from minus 13 to plus 17. So we feel like we're in a heat wave here in southern Vermont. So happy to have you with us. If you're in the stream tonight, some people will be joining us along the way. I have a very special guest tonight. I think you're going to be fascinated with his story. But before I bring my friend on, I'm going to make a couple of program announcements and one special announcement that I want you to pay careful attention to. This coming Sunday at our church here in Brattleboro, we're going to be having a young lady by the name of Hannah Levi. Now, Hannah was a little girl when she was growing up, and her family attended our church, and she has an amazing testimony of what God has done in her life. And now Hannah works for an organization called Harvesters Ministries International, and they train pastors and plant churches in over 100 countries in the world. I think in the last decade, Hannah told me they planted over 147,000 churches in these many, many countries around the world. Harvesters is a new partner of our church. We're begun to partner with Hannah and Harvesters Ministries, and we're really excited about it. So if you're in the area and you don't have a church that you attend regularly, come and visit us on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, January 26th, with Hannah Levi, talking about what God is doing in different parts of the world. As I'm saying that, I want to show you this. One of the things that Harvesters does is they do a disciple makers workshop training. And they are coming to Brattleboro on the 28th and 29th. It'll be a Friday night and a Saturday morning. And we're going to do their Disciple Makers training program, which they use with pastors and church leaders all over the world. And our motto or our theme this year at our church is bearing fruit. You know, Jesus said, "You didn't choose me, but I chose you and ordained you that you would go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain." And so we're really focusing on bearing fruit in this coming year. But if you go to acfellowship.net and look for the tab that says The World, you can go and find out more about the Disciple Makers program. And there's an online registration there where you can register yourself or even a group to come and join us. It's absolutely free. Won't cost you a thing. We're going to carry the cost of the entire training for everyone who comes. And then next Thursday night, right here on Night Mike, my good friend Josephus Housey is going to be with us. Josephus is one of my most popular speakers, and he's a very, very good friend. He's the pastor of Redeeming the Time Ministries in Agawam, Massachusetts, and Josephus is going to be with us on next Thursday night. So I wanted to make you aware of all of that so you could tune in with us. But tonight, I have a young man waiting in the back room. His name is Jason Dennen, and he has an amazing story, which I am going to give you the opportunity to listen to now as I introduce him. Jason, come on into the studio all the way from Boulder, Colorado. You're living in Boulder. Did I forget, or did I get that right?
Straight from Boulder, right under the mountains.
Right under the mountains. You know, I speak at a Christian Writers Conference in Estes Park from time to time at the YMCA of the Rockies, and it's one of my favorite trips all year long when I get out to get to the Rockies. I'm from the Appalachian Mountains, and they're beautiful, but they're molehills beside some of those mountains out there. But you are, if I'm reading your biography right, you are a native of New Jersey.
Grew up in New Jersey, been out in Colorado for 23 or so years. So yeah, both.
Why did you go to New Jersey? I mean, from New Jersey to Colorado.
Well, I grew up in New Jersey. I didn't know anything different, and I was in college, and I was part of a Bible study group, and there happened to be a conference actually on the other side of the Continental Divide in the Snow Mountain YMCA is where it was in Winter Park, and I got invited to go to that, and that was my first time west of the Mississippi. I looked around, I was like, I can't believe how beautiful this place is, and finished that, went back to college, worked a couple of years, and the West was calling. I wanted to escape some of the busy roads of New Jersey and wanted to explore and try something new. And I said, if I might regret it if I don't try and move out there and see what it's like to live there. And quit my job, moved out there, and it turned out to be an amazing decision. And I've been out here ever since.
Yeah. I see you've got your book that you wrote there, 8 Days to Sunrise. I want to read to the folks the back cover a little bit. It says, Jason Dennen is a Christian author, inspirational speaker, skydiver, mountain climber, triathlete, and explorer. Well, that's quite a resume there, and I'm as I told you later, I occasionally climb a ladder. That's the extent of my adventure these days. But you're going to tell us a story tonight about one of those adventures that you had, jumping out of airplanes, and that's the basis of your book.
Absolutely. So, kind of the before the accident, I got a new promotion at work a couple years earlier, and finally felt like I was progressing in my career, and hard work was paying off. And what they didn't tell me was it was going to turn into 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, and it was just kind of putting one foot in front of the other to get through each day. And I wasn't really spending time with family or friends, or wasn't serving our Lord in any way. And I was kind of lost, really, to put it bluntly. And I always say one of my best attributes and worst attributes is the same thing. And that's the ability to put my head down and get through whatever challenge I'm going through. Now, it turns out it's an amazing characteristic when you have to get through a really tough time in your life, like the accident we'll talk about.
Right.
But it's a horrible thing because it can bury you in this work, in this life that's not making you happy, but you feel responsible because you took this job, and you feel like you owe it to the people who promoted you that you'll do it successfully,
Right.
and with all you have. So it was an amazing amount of pressure, amazing amount of stress. And, I used to pray every day that, Lord, get me through this day, because I'm not sure if I stop, I can keep doing this every day.
Yeah.
And I realized after a while, I said, maybe I'm praying the wrong prayer, because I think it always worked, but I wasn't being really honest. And then I gave the most powerful prayer I ever gave. And I said, Lord, I'm lost. I've been doing it my way too long and it's not working, and I need your help. If you lead me, I'll follow you. And I had no idea of the power of that prayer for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Because a couple weeks later, I'm skydiving, which at that point I had done for a couple of years. And really, I used it as an escape of reality, really, because I was so stressed out at work. And when you're at the airport and skydiving, you're really locked in and in the moment. And it allowed me not to think about the stress and the unhappiness my life had become, because I was so obsessed with getting the job done at work, and putting my life and everything that I find important in life, or what, if you ask me what was important in life, I was putting aside. And not purposely. It's like little by little you make these decisions. And, a couple of years later, like, how did I get so far away from the core values that I think are important in life? So I'm jumping that day, and I had 2 successful jumps. On my third jump, it's late afternoon, and parachute opens. Everything looks great. I'm under the parachute. I'm coming in for a landing, and I'm about 150 feet off the ground. And a huge gust of wind comes off the mountains and picks me up and violently slams me forward. So violently slammed me forward, it increased my speed greatly. So I was prepared to land on a grass field that I landed on hundreds of times before with skydiving. But when I get hit by the wind, it increases my speed greatly, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to land on that grass field, because ahead of me, in front of that grass field, is a cattle fence, 3-wire strand fence, and then about 10 feet behind that is a row of airplane hangars. And so from 150 feet, you have about 5 seconds before you're going to land and touch down to the ground. So I get hit by the wind, and I'm kind of, out of sorts for a second or two. And I kind of get a hold of myself. And, the first thing you think of in what is a lethal decision that happens for skydivers, one of the number one reasons they pass away, is it's called low turns.
Hmm.
So the first thing you say was, Jason, you got hit by the wind. Just turn away from the airplane hangar, and you're not going to hit it. But the reality is, at that altitude, you have two handles, and you pull on, right or left, depending what direction you want to go. But what a turn happens with a parachute is you dive towards the ground after you pull that handle, and that creates the turn because parts of your parachute collapses and
Right.
as you dive down, it creates the turn. So if you do that from 150 feet, you'll increase your speed greatly. You'll hit the ground because your parachute won't have enough time to turn and then recover. So
Hmm.
the first thing it goes, do not do that. You will kill yourself if you turn. So I kind of just shook it off and tried to stay loose, and I'm counting down those 5 seconds until I land. I'm not really sure if I'm going to make it down before that fence and be okay or not. And then with about a second to go, I'm carrying way too much speed. There's no way I'm going to stop before hitting that fence. And I go, life's about to change. I said,
Yeah.
thank God it did.
Hmm.
And I impact that fence going, 30 or so miles an hour. It comes tight on my chest and abdomen really quickly. The wires strands break within, pretty much right away as soon as it comes tight. And I hit pretty much full speed into the airplane hangar. So I hit it probably, 30 or so miles an hour. And I go in blackout because of the horrific damage it does to my body. And so the first thing that comes on scene is the people from the skydiving
Right.
company, and I'm laying there and I'm blacked out, and they see body parts bent in directions they shouldn't be bent in, and they're trying to figure out, am I okay? And they start talking to me, and I had no idea I said this because I was blacked out. They told me months later, this is the first thing I said was, don't call anyone, I'll be okay, just give me a minute. So yeah. So what it
That's a
really
typical male response.
right. It's
Give
one of
me a
those things
minute.
where you ever fall down, you want to get up as quickly as possible, because if you get up as quickly as possible, then you know that you're okay and nothing's really wrong. So
Hmm.
I imagine that's what my mind did. It went into fight or flight mode. Something's horribly wrong, and you better start fighting or something bad's going to happen.
Right.
So they ignored me, thankfully. Called
Hmm.
911, and they were on the scene in a couple of minutes. And then they called the Flight for Life helicopter and flew me to the nearest level 1 trauma center that takes care of the worst kind of accidents. So they helicopter me there, and when I hit the building, I break 10 of my 12 ribs on the left side. So that took the brunt of it. And the force on the ribs was so hard that they broke, impacted my heart. And your heart sits in something called the pericardial sac. It broke through the sac, ended up on the right side of my chest, and was all twisted up, along with 20 other broken bones and 3 other organs they had to fix. But the
Mm.
heart was the main thing that could have killed me.
Yeah.
The doctors later tell my family, after they do the surgery, that you know they had never done this surgery in this hospital, none of the doctors in the hospital, because no one has ever made it in alive with that injury to their hospital. And they see the worst of the worst accidents. They have 2 helicopters on standby at all times. So when you get hurt in Colorado, a lot of people get hurt in adventure sports in Colorado, that's where they bring them.
There's
So
a lot of ways to get hurt in Colorado, I will tell you.
there are, there are. So yeah, they couldn't believe I was alive. The doctor, later tells my family, like, well, I knew how to
Mhm.
fix it because of my medical textbooks. When I went to medical school, apparently he has a
Yeah.
photographic memory. So they were so unsure that the heart actually was fixed that for 3 days they didn't bother closing up my chest, because they cut me from my collarbone all the way down under my navel to open up my body and
Right.
fix the heart and the other organs. So they tested it 3 days in a row, and then finally they are like, okay, he's going to live. And then they went into the rest of fixing my body, and they
Mhm.
induced me in a coma for 8 days
Yeah.
during that whole period, because they didn't want me
Yeah.
to move.
Yeah. I remember in your book you have some photographs, and so you basically autographed that hangar with your face.
Yeah, there's a big dent in the side
Yeah.
of the hangar, and
Yeah.
part of the recovery process after I get out of the hospital, I'm in the hospital for 3.5 months, is to really revisit it and relive the experience, because I didn't think I wanted to hide from it. I said, one, I wanted to thank all the people at the skydiving school for sure,
Right.
but also see it. And after saying thank you, I went over to the field where I was in that building and took a picture of it. And it's sort of an undescribable experience as far as, your life
Mhm.
almost ended on that field into that building.
Right.
And one of the things that happened, so when I'm laying on that ground, even though I'm blacked out, for some reason I always remembered the person's voice that started talking to me when I'm laying on that ground. Not
Mhm.
sure what he said, but I recognized the voice as one of my instructors who helped teach me how to skydive. And so one of the motivations of getting out of hospital the whole time was going back to see him and thank him. And unfortunately, a week before I got out of the hospital, he crashed into the ground, and the, I broke. What they always say is, I broke all my bodies, but my brain was intact and my spinal cord was intact, and everything was, repairable. Where unfortunately, he had the opposite. Nothing broke, but he had a traumatic brain injury that he would never recover from. And so when I go back to this field, because I wasn't able to thank him because it happened before I got out of the hospital,
Mhm.
you're standing there on that field and you're looking out, and there was actually another accident 2 weeks after that instructor got hurt where the guy passed away. It was uncommon for so many, bad things to happen in a short amount of time. And you're looking out on that field going, we were going through the same skydiving, the similar thing, and they didn't live and I did.
Yeah.
And the responsibility that goes with it is that I better do something with this
Yeah.
because
You know,
they didn't get a chance.
It's interesting, Jason. Uh, I have my finger and a marker in that chapter. I was going to ask you about that because I think the title of that chapter is Survivors. What is it? Survivor's
Survivor's
Guilt.
guilt. Yeah.
How did you deal with that? That's a thing that I've heard before. I've heard many people who came through something
Mhm.
and others go through the same thing and didn't survive, maybe even the same event. But that's a real thing, isn't it? Why did I live? Why did they die? And why did I live? How was that to deal with?
Yeah. It was. The way I dealt with is like, do something with this. You could waste the rest of your life, or you can find some way to help somebody. And really, when I was going through that accident in the hospital, I was also, when I prayed, I said, Lord, I need purpose because I feel like I lost purpose in life. And as I'm going through that journey in the hospital, I'm rediscovering my purpose of what can I do? The accident wound up being a gift to me that I had to use for the good. And it's really to help people going through their toughest time. And I wouldn't have possibly understood anyone else going through their toughest time in their life unless I went through it first. And I realized that was the gift. And the more I told the story, even when I was laying in the hospital, people would come in and ask me what happened, and it was, really raw. And at first it was almost a burden kind of to tell the story because I was going through PTSD. I was reliving it over and
Right,
over and
right.
over again.
Yeah,
And one night I realized, I was like, no, this isn't a burden, this is a gift. And because every time I told the story, I stopped thinking about how it made me feel to tell the story, but I started thinking about the reaction I would get from other people. And the reaction was, I would get finished telling the story and the doubts I was going through, and the unsure nature of the rest of my life. And then they would start talking about what they were going through in life. Mostly there were people that were working in hospitals, but things they were going through with their children, or marriages, or the
right.
fact that
Mhm.
they give so much to people that are in the hospital. And you know what? Everyone doesn't make it out alive, and
Yep.
it's heavy for them. And I could tell, one of the amazing things of laying in the hospital, you become so observant because I couldn't move for pretty much 3 months. So you're laying there. As soon as someone would walk in the room, I could tell just by a word or two exactly how they were feeling and what they were going through that day,
Yeah,
because you could just
yeah.
take it in. And people I didn't know other than nurses and people that worked in the hospital, but you started to get a sense of what they how their day was going.
Mm.
And so as I'm discovering my purpose, and I go, what do you do with this, and how do I translate this to help some other people? And one, when life's about more than you, and it's about beyond you, you start getting strength beyond your normal strength. because
Mhm.
you have a purpose beyond yourself. So as this is continuing evolving, so I get out of the hospital, I'm standing there that day, and I'm still figuring out what I'm supposed to be doing, because it doesn't all come to you at once, and it's not always 100% clear, and it's sometimes a little bit of trial and error. So I'm sitting on that field, I had just had the sense of, you know, they don't get a chance to do something else beyond, because they're no longer there, and I do.
Yeah.
You better not waste it. And
Mhm.
I always have this feeling of like time's running out, you know, and it's whatever you're doing, it's not uh, enough, or it's not fast enough, or it's not, like when I go and speak, I always think to myself, I was like, you have one chance for those people that are in front of you today, and you better make an impact on them today to help them through whatever they're going through or
Mhm.
will go through, because we're all going to go
Yeah.
through tough times in our life. And that's kind of, it's the pressure you put on yourself, but that's okay, because I feel like
Mm.
I'm doing something that's helping there. Uh, our Lord and Savior gave me a new purpose, and it's like, this is
Mhm.
what you get to do because you were
Yeah.
saved by grace,
Yeah.
and don't waste that. And,
Mhm.
and so I'm driven by over and over. It's like no just means you better find a yes somewhere else, because you
Yeah.
have a job to do and you were given a purpose, and you better take advantage of that.
You know, two things come to my mind as I listen to your testimony. One is you prayed and you asked God to do something in your life, to make a change, to change your direction. And at that, when you're praying that prayer, you have no idea that involves running into an airplane hangar after jumping out of a plane 17,000 feet in the air. And God says, "Well, I'm getting ready to answer your prayer." And the other thing that comes to my mind is I've said for years, and this really goes to speak to what you've experienced. I don't trust anybody who doesn't walk with a limp. You know, Jacob wrestled with God, and for the rest of his life, he walked with a limp. The Bible tells us that we if we don't go through difficult things, if we don't go through our own tragedies, our own heartache, our own struggles, then we really have nothing to say to someone who is going through their struggles. You know, if we live that sheltered, perfect life where nothing's ever gone wrong, we've never wanted for anything, we've never been in a tragic situation or anything, we're essentially useless to those people who are really struggling. And so I don't know. I was doing a study of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob one time, and I was just reading that story about the angel touching Jake, the hollow of his hip. And from that day forward, Jacob walked with a limp. And I think I decided then that was going to be one of my pieces of wisdom. Don't trust anybody who doesn't walk with a limp. Uh, now, I mean, you can't take that literally. I don't know if you limp or not, but you've certainly got the battle scars, and can certainly know what it feels like. I can't imagine what it feels like to lay in that bed for 3 months. I've seen pictures in your book. I've seen pictures of you, and you were wired together, bolted together, strapped together, screwed together, and they basically just remodeled you and put you back together again. But you know what it means to hit a hard place.
Absolutely. I would say that the hardest part was really that 2.5, 3 months that I really couldn't move, especially the early stages of that. And it was like I was burdened, and God gave me rest physically, but not mentally. The way
Hmm.
I say is, it took away all of my little crutches and my little things I used to do to really avoid thinking about things. So, for instance, I'm stressed out, I'm not having a good day, I'd go out for a run and get an endorphin rush. Or, like I said, skydiving was really in avoidance. Is it really fun? Absolutely. But there was a sense of avoidance in that too, where I knew being in the moment doesn't it allows me not to think about the other unhappiness in life. So when I lay there for all that time, I start reliving my life, reliving relationships. Was I really there for people, or was my head was always racing somewhere else? It's always 100 miles an hour. And I go, use some of the lessons you learned from skydiving to everyday life, meaning being in the present, which I love so much for skydiving, also needs to be used in relationships you have with other
That's
people.
right.
You don't want to be sitting in a room with someone and in your head's every other place but with that person, honoring that person you're with. Um, and I really, because it took those crutches away from me to think about, to avoid really thinking about life. I go, are you happy with your life? What can you do to be reborn and come out of this better than you were before? And right away, the purpose didn't come to me. You don't get all answers when you want it. It's like in time, you get answers when it's
Right.
God's time to
Right.
give you an
Yeah.
answer. And that's good, because I wasn't ready for the answer on day one, right? It was a little by little, and it's like, rebuild yourself. You're not living your purpose. You're not living up to who you say you are right now. You're lost, and it's okay to be lost for a while, but it's like, I need to come back to, like, I just, being lost is a terrible place to be, and getting up every day is really hard when you're lost. And when
Yeah.
you have purpose in your life, it's a lot easier to get up every day.
Yeah. It
Um,
is.
so that was so challenging, and I had to hit rock bottom, and beat myself up in that 10 weeks. And then I started changing my mind, and thinking about things. I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I think of the parable of talents. It was like, all I was
Mhm.
thinking was all the things I couldn't do, instead of saying, I might only be able to move my hand right now, but there's something you can do to rebuild yourself and get out of this. Uh,
Yeah.
and when you start building on that, and really overcoming temptation was a huge thing. Won't be tempted beyond what we can bear, and there be a way out. And that was a huge mantra when I'm in that coma, because that whole coma was, I was visited by nightmare after nightmare after nightmare, and they all have a similar theme, in that people are with me, they're unwilling to help me, and are leaving me for dead, and I
Yeah.
have to decide whether I want to live or not. And at first, you're just kind of hanging on, and you're trying to make sense of what's going on, because when you're in a coma, you're not waking up after each of these nightmares and shaking off and say, well, this is not real. It becomes your reality when you're in that coma. And then, what I say is, you build a strong foundation, and that's going to guide you through the storm. And as I'm laying there, all these scripture starts coming to me and starts calming me down. It's like chaotic, and I'm like, this is just temptation. It's like, the trials we go through are here to test our faith and develop our perseverance. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
it's like calming effect, and you're like, oh, all right, now I have a direction. I always say, when you don't know where to go, all the scripture and parables came to me that I learned long ago. So it was like God was preparing me, unknowingly. I had no idea this was going to happen years before this ever happened. So it was like I was prepared. He put people in my life to teach me all the lessons. Then it was like, all of a sudden, things you may have thought you forgotten, you had never forgotten, had become part of you. You just, yeah, and you had it exactly when you needed it. So that was, the amazing, some of the lessons and the driving force behind it. It's kind of like, building a foundation is important, but all of a sudden, when you see all that scripture to work, you're like, it's like God's like, watch
Mm.
this, and then
Mm.
you're guided all the way. And it's and you feel like, your Lord and Savior's giving you a story, and he's guiding you along the way. It's like, fix yourself
Mm.
first, and then you're going to tell everybody
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah.
and you're going to tell
Yeah.
them that everything in there in that Bible is true, and everything about it is applicable today, just as it was when it was
Mhm.
written. And this is the way.
Yeah.
So I already knew that beforehand, but when you test it to the extreme of what they say, you never should have survived this, and only by grace of God did I survive.
Mhm.
And there was a big moment when so at this point, I'm in my fourth hospital. I'm at the rehab hospital, and I couldn't get wet for 10 or so weeks, because I have all these incisions and they're healing. So I get a shower for the first time. I'm in a wheelchair still, and
Mhm.
and they shower me. I can't even touch my hands to my head. I'm so inflexible. So they finish giving me a shower, and they put my wheelchair in front of the mirror, and I have no shirt on, and this is the first time I saw my reflection since the accident. So at this point, it's about 10 weeks or so after the accident, because you're laying in bed, you don't get a mirror. And so at first I see my body, and I see all the scars for the first time, because you're laying in bed and you have a gown on you. You can't see your own scars. and I see that, and it's basically skin hanging off bones, and I go, wow, I'm starting from nothing. But I said, I can get that back, no problem. But then I stare myself in the eyes and just ask myself, the big question. I said, are you who you proclaim to be? You could proclaim to have faith. You could proclaim to believe in God's plan for your life. But, if you, oftentimes we can build up who we are or what we think or our values when we're at our best. But the
Yeah.
reality is what we really believe in and if we can execute or not is when we're at our lowest point and go, do you really believe in these things?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause,
Let me back you up a minute, because you
sure.
said something that I found very, very interesting. And I'd like you to address it a little bit. You talked about when you were in a coma.
Mhm.
And, we say coma is unconscious, but apparently it's not unconscious. You're just at a different level of consciousness. And you were having nightmares. You were having all sorts of how would you describe it again? Just tell us about that a little bit, because I think there's something there that at some point, maybe not tonight, I'd like to explore, because I don't know that I've ever talked to anyone specifically about a time when they were in a coma.
Mhm.
But you're laying there, you're in a coma. That was an induced coma?
Yes.
Am I? Yeah. Okay. So they induced the coma. But there, at some level, there is consciousness going on there. Could you hear what was going on around you? Were you conscious of people around you?
No, I wasn't. I
Okay.
wasn't aware of anything outside of me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was one brief second where where I thought I woke up when they were moving me from one kind of the gurney to a surgery room, and I had it,
Uh-huh.
and I hit, and I said, "Oh!" I just like let out. So I thought that was real. I mean, but besides that, it was all in kind of that altered nightmare world.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of started off as I'll explain the first dream that I can remember from it.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm not usually someone who remembers, nightmares and dreams like that at all, let
Uh-huh.
alone, I mean, they're burned in my mind. So the first one I remember is, so I'm being carried almost like a log by these two medical personnel, and they're carrying me out to the desert. Um, and they place me, and I'm in the you just have I'm wrapped in the gown and
Right.
blankets, and they place me down on the ground, and they say, "Sorry, we can't help you." And then they about face and just leave. And at this point, I my body was similar to how it was in real life, meaning I was unable to move. I was unable mostly to talk,
Mm-hmm.
and so I can't move, and I'm just laying in the desert. And you're looking around, you're just like, "What do you mean you can't?" You're thinking to yourself, "What do you mean you can't help me? You're leaving me in the middle of the
You're
desert,
just
and you
going to
just
leave
leave
me
me to
here.
die."
Yeah.
Yeah, and so as it goes on, and I'm battling through these, and once I kind of recognize it as temptation, I kind of go, "Just get through this next one. Just get through this next one." And it becomes more and more violent, and it's almost like the dreams sense that I, instead of weakening me, I was getting stronger, and they were trying to finish me off.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way I almost describe it is, your temptation comes to you when you're weak, not when you're strong, because it wouldn't be temptation if you were strong. And it's it's going, the easy way is to let go. No one will let you. No one will know if if you let go and let yourself die. No one's going to blame you. No,
Yeah.
it's inviting, because like there's no more pain. You don't have to deal with that. But I knew that was the wrong direction.
Wow. But you were conscious of that, at some level, that you were really fighting a battle at
Yes,
that point.
yeah, I knew it was trying to over. I was trying to be. It was trying to overcome me, to say, you could take the easy way out. And so
Wow.
the decision was, so I hit the building, had no idea what my injuries were. Now in that coma, I knew I was in trouble, I was broken. I just didn't know, what that was.
Right.
Uh, so I knew it could end whatever I was going through. Um, and I knew the tough way was to decide, you don't know, you have an unsure future. you don't know if you have a brain injury, you don't have a spinal injury, you don't know if you could recover from this or what's going on. But the only way to go forward is overcoming temptation and find a way out, because you're promised, you're not going to be overcome by temptation and there'll be a way out. So that belief was, there's going to be a way out from this. You keep on having to
Wow.
fight through it. And that's the mindset I had when I was going through it. And
I
like I
find
said,
that absolutely fascinating that you were waging war literally for life while you were in that place. You sort of it's interesting, Jason. I've taught for years uh, that nobody that serves God, nobody that's called of God to a specific work or a specific destiny, if you look at it from the biblical record, everybody that God calls to serve him goes to the desert. They go to the wilderness. Everybody, Moses, David, Joseph, they all end up in Jacob when he had to run away from his brother. Whoever God calls, and even Jesus, before he started his ministry, had to go out to the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And there is great truth in that, because that's where we're tested. That's and God doesn't test us for his benefit. He tests us for our benefit so that we know what we're made of. And so I'm listening to you, and all of those times that I've taught that are coming back to me. And I'm saying, this young man went to the wilderness. You just did it in a subconscious or an unconscious state, but you were doing warfare with the enemy as real as Joseph or David or Moses or even Jesus when you were in that coma.
yeah, and it definitely thought of Luke chapter 4 with, Jesus goes out to the desert for 40 days and doesn't eat, and, is
Mm-hmm.
tested and then comes out and there's 3 more tests. So, I always say, also you have your example of how do you live your life, and or as close as we can to, Jesus' life. This is the guiding force. This is your example of how you live. So it's like, he didn't give in when he was tested. The whole world was his if he wanted it.
Yeah.
If he, worships, Satan, and kind of when you have that as a backup, you're like, nope, you're not going to give in either. So
Right.
that's
Right.
certainly when you have examples like that, then it's,
Mm-hmm.
someone's already done it. So you're
Right.
following, right?
So you were in this coma for how long? 8 days?
Yeah, 8 days.
8 days. And hence the title of your book, Eight
Yeah,
Days Till Sunrise. Yeah.
absolutely. Because it was
How did you come up to the till sunrise thing there?
so the first day when I got hurt, so the day it opens up, night, beautiful sunrise. I go for a trail run right underneath the Flatirons, which is a amazing
Mm-hmm.
rock faces in Boulder, Colorado. Then I head over to the airport, and I eventually get hurt. So that was there was the sunrise on the first day, and then in the coma, it was always extremely dark.
Yeah.
And there was no sun the entire time. Every nightmare was always dark, which is also sort of interesting. And they always say that and I can tell you this from mountain climbing as well. The toughest part of the day is always the darkest part of the day,
Yeah.
because you're in the darkest the longest, and you start doubting yourself. You start questioning if you can get through it. And as soon as the light comes up, it's like a whole new, you're reborn, confidence
Mm-hmm.
comes back, a new hope comes up. So the 8th day when I wake up, when I open my eyes for the first time, I see the sun coming through the hospital room window.
Mm-hmm.
And first time I saw the sun in 8 days, and I'm greeted by the doctor who tells me I'm lucky to be alive. And I slowly reach up and kind of give him a little bit of a high five, and
Yeah.
he
Right.
looks at me like I'm a crazy guy that I gave him a high five. But
Yeah.
it's yeah, that's the 8 days.
Yeah. So they brought you out of the coma after 8 days. You didn't just wake up. They literally brought you out of the coma. Is that what I'm understanding?
I mean, I never asked. I'm assuming
Mm-hmm.
they weaned me off slowly, because of
Mm-hmm.
all the injuries. I was okay to, I guess. Well, I wasn't moving a lot when I woke up, but
Mm-hmm.
so I'm sure they brought me out. I didn't. I'm sure I didn't magically wake up,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I was in a daze at first for sure with
Oh
those
yeah.
medications,
Mm-hmm.
and little by little you kind of get more
Mm-hmm.
clarity back in your mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, they controlled the coma, so it
Yeah.
wasn't like
Okay.
they didn't expect me to wake up or anything like that.
Okay.
That was
Yeah. So
controlled.
for 8 days, you're in this literally spiritual warfare,
Mhm.
and now you wake up. And what's your mindset after you are aware of how badly you're injured?
Well, at first you're in shock because you hit the building. I have no idea what's broken, and so the doctor leaves like a few seconds later, and I'm laying there, and you're kind of just looking around trying to figure out, well, what's wrong with me? And I look down, and
Hmm.
there's casts on my arms, and I have gauze all over my chest, and there's 10 or 12 or so tubes coming out of my chest and my stomach, draining blood. I can't feel my feet at first, so I'm not sure if I'm paralyzed. And then there's 5 or 6 IV bags hanging, all connected to me, and then there's 5 or 6 big machines making their own beeping noises, and I have no idea what they're monitoring. And you're kind of laying there going, I'm not sure what's, because you wake up and you're out of it. It's not like they come in
Right.
and tell you everything what's wrong with you,
Yeah.
and so I'm trying to figure that out, and I'm like, am I paralyzed or not? And so you're at first the feeling is shock, and then soon after I say, go back to that foundation. The first thing I do is pray, because that's what I knew how to do. And I thank God for, I was like, you never left my side. You got me through this. I don't know where this is going to lead, but I'm going to still follow you. I'm still coming. I'm just letting you
Yeah.
know. I'm not. I haven't changed my mind. Um, and so yeah, that was the first thing pretty much I did.
Hmm.
And uh, early on, one of the things also that happened was, so my dad's there and my mom too, and the nurse comes in and says, you need to drink something because you're really dehydrated. And so my dad just picks up the cup and puts the straw in my mouth, and I start
Hmm.
drinking. And he's and I was like, that is the best thing I have ever had in my entire life. I go, what is that, Dad? He goes, that's water. So
Yeah.
so I get him to crack and laugh
Yeah.
because
Right.
it was the best thing. Because it's amazing when you go through deprivation,
Hmm.
and I had gone through deprivation before, in terms of climbing adventures and things like that. We don't
Hmm.
have food for 48, 50 hours,
Hmm.
and you're on the move and not moving, not
Hmm.
stopping for 50 hours. And I knew what that felt like, and that was deprivation related. But the one thing he said to me, he goes, "This is going to be just like one of your races." And at first I didn't understand fully what he meant. And I've done triathlons and all kinds of endurance races over my life. But later, sometimes somebody will tell you something weeks before, but it takes your brain to catch up to it. And what he meant
Yeah.
is, all you need to do is do something small every single day, and that's going to
Yep.
add up over time, and you're going to
Hmm.
get through this. So he
Little
said it in
step.
code, but
Yeah.
but
Little steps. Little
yes.
steps.
Hmm.
Yeah. Great journeys are made up of little steps, and I think sometimes we forget that. Now, another picture that I saw in your book was the picture your mom took when she came into the hospital, and she was afraid you were not going to survive, and so she took a picture so that she would have a picture of you. But boy, I don't know if I would have wanted that picture to remember my son by or not. That was, you were pretty broken up. No.
It wasn't my best side, but she
Yeah.
did what she could with her phone camera. But
Yeah.
yeah, she I'm not sure, she probably knew what to do really when she walked in and saw me in that mess. And I guess that's, you know, she was trying to deal with it, and that's what she thought. And
Yeah.
but one of the amazing things was when she takes the picture and she walks over to me, and this is relayed to me months later by my mom,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
she picks up my hand, and she says, "Jason, it's Mom. I'm here." And this
Mhm.
is, I'm deep in the coma at this point,
Mhm.
and I squeeze her hand. I have no recollection of that ever happening, uh,
Mhm.
because I was so deep in that coma. I never knew she picked up my hand, whatever. But it was a message that went out to my parents, like, this may look terrible because I had a breathing tube down my throat, and
Yeah.
but it's going to be okay. And I'm somewhere deep down in there fighting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is just an amazing story. Then you were, how long did you say? You 3.5, 4 months you were in the hospital. You were hospitalized
Three
in
and
the
a half
bed,
months.
basically,
hmm
and then you started rehab, and that probably was a pretty long process.
Yeah, it took me 3 months before they would allow me to put any weight on my legs because I had broken femur, pelvis was broken in the front and back, so I
Hmm.
so I had to lay there. So
You really
eventually,
had no skeleton at that point that was functional.
not a lot.
Yeah,
So
right.
one of the things when I went to that rehab hospital,
Hmm.
they so I say to my therapist, I'm hopeful, and I realize they don't really tell me like, well, what's going to be the result when you get out of this hospital? What am I going to be able to achieve? So they come in one day, and it's about day 3 of of going to this being at this hospital. And I say, hey, I'm just letting you guys know we're preparing me to walk out of this place on the last day.
Hmm.
You, and oh, there was no buy-in. I get this crazy look, just like, there's no way you're walking out of this hospital. They're like, you're good. We're preparing you to leave in a wheelchair. Um, and I was just like, okay, we'll play by your rules and we'll do what you say, and I'll do anything you tell me to do. And what they now looking back, I could see why they think I was out of my mind, because the
Hmm.
first day they had to move me from my bed to my wheelchair, and first they said, "Can you sit up so we can move you over?" I wasn't strong enough to sit up. They asked me to turn on my side. I wasn't strong enough to turn on my side. They had to just kind of drag me from the bed into the wheelchair, and then they asked me to push the wheelchair to breakfast, which was like 50 yards away down the hallway, and my room's about 20 feet wide. So this was only about 3 days after they took the cast off my arms. So my arms are super weak,
Yeah.
and I'm pushing, and I only make it about 10 feet. Never gave up, but I was going so slow that they're
Mhm.
just like, breakfast is going to be over unless
Yeah,
they
right. Get you down there. Yeah.
push you there. So that was day 1. So that's what they were looking at. They're like, this guy can't even roll on his side. There's no way he's walking out of here. So I never mentioned it again until finally they do x-rays on me 4 weeks into being in that rehab hospital. And if they x-rayed my legs and there wasn't going to enough healing on them, I was going to go home in a wheelchair because I wouldn't have the opportunity to put weight on my legs. But luckily I wasn't fully healed, but the doctor said, we'll let you put some weight on your legs, it'll help you heal faster. And
Mhm.
I wind up walking after 3 months, and the therapist is wheeling me back to my room, and she thinks I'm going to celebrate, I guess, and I'm just, I just assume this is just part of the deal. This wasn't some sort of miracle to me. This is just part of the plan. And
Yeah.
she said, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've never seen anybody just get up and walk like you did after having as many injuries and being bedridden for so long.
Mhm.
And I think she forgot that I told her I was going to walk out of that hospital on my own. And uh, I said, I don't celebrate a couple steps. Remember, the goal is to
Mhm.
walk out of this hospital on the last day. And then a week
Mhm.
later, I walked all the way out of the hospital with crutches and all the way to my
Right.
car.
Right.
And so yeah, it was the mindset was always just really a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
When at first I think it was probably the medication, thinking I was just going to jump up and start walking one day, when that wasn't
Right.
really reality. So
Jason, while you've been talking, a scripture verse has come to my mind. I thought about it earlier. I'm going to put it up. It's from Psalm 118, where David says, I shall not die, but I shall live and recount the deeds of the Lord. That's pretty much your story. That maybe some people would have said Jason should have died. By all, I mean, look at your buddies there at the airport. They came out of an airplane and had similar situations, and they died, or one died and one had serious brain trauma. But for you, for whatever purpose God had in mind, his promise to you was, you shall not die, but you shall live, and you will recount the deeds of the Lord. And that, I think the cover of your book says, a true story of survival, rebirth, and discovering the purpose in my life. Uh, so we've got about 10 minutes left. Describe to us your purpose and how you are trying to fulfill that purpose.
Sure. So it's really evolved over time in that, I said, what do I do with this? And kind of, I was clued in when I started sharing the story. So at first I said, well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to share this to churches or to people that I know and people that I meet along the way. And this is, I always say that the accident was a gift because it attracts people. But then once they realize the story is really not about the skydiving accident, it's about all the
Right.
things after the accident, and faith and growth, and so it's a way to invite people that may not necessarily be Christians, also Christians, but also, and then pulling them in with the story of the skydive and going, oh, and then really sharing from there. So I've been lucky enough to really connect to people that are going through tough times. So I've have the opportunity to speak at churches, at professional organizations, universities. Really, the
Mm-hmm.
book came about when I spoke at a church. I get finished, and someone comes up to me and says, my friend's going through opioid addiction, and do you have anything written down that I could give them? And I volunteered to go visit them, and they said they won't even open the door for anybody because they're so far
Mm-hmm.
into addiction. And at that time, it was only the third time I had ever spoken, and I had nothing written down. So part of it's really listening, not to how I want to deliver the message of our Lord and Savior. It's to understand how people need to receive the message, right?
Right.
Where Jesus didn't didn't speak to shepherds how shepherds need to be listened to, or hear the message in the Bible, or the same thing with
Right.
fishermen. Or as he spoke to a skydiver like a skydiver needed to speak to, and
Yeah.
that's how
Right.
he came
Yeah.
to be. So and so the book is another way of distributing the message of overcoming struggle, and how there's times we're going to doubt ourselves, but we can overcome amazing circumstances to get through that. From that, I've been lucky enough to visit people in hospitals, visit people going through accidents and things like that. So it's ever evolving to really listen to not how I want to choose to give the message. It's
Mm-hmm.
where the need is, and finding that need, and then going to that person as they needed to be listened to. And a
Yeah.
lot of it's, we say speaker, but my favorite part of it is listening,
Right.
because when you share your story, it opens up other people to start sharing things that they're going through in a way, unless you were vulnerable in sharing your own story. And I
Right.
think that's I always say that's my favorite part. Not when I get to speak,
Mm-hmm.
afterwards, when I
Right.
start when people start coming up to me and bearing their souls and what they're going
Right.
through.
Yeah.
And that's really the blessing to me. And
Mm-hmm.
someone just last weekend, it was somebody I've known for 30 years. I went to college with, hadn't seen him in years, and I was back on the East Coast, and we had dinner together with a couple of friends, and he confided in me after everyone else left from dinner, and we were out in the parking lot just talking, and he would talk to me about he had a suicide attempt when he was about 18 or 19 years old. He put a gun to his mouth and pulled the trigger, and it didn't go off. And he told me about the aftermath, and how difficult it was, and the weighty burden it was for him to go through life. So a few weeks ago, he tells me he was at a funeral. It was a friend from childhood died of alcohol addiction, and another guy's there that he's talking with that he knew from high school, and he and he's saying, I, I'm suicidal. I might want to kill myself. And he shares his story about his suicide attempt that never went through. And he told me, he's like, I never knew what to do with it. And he goes, I finally felt like I fulfilled why was able to stay alive just for telling that story and sharing that with that guy once. I said,
Mm-hmm.
there's your purpose. That's why you're alive. You got to do that, and you got to
Mm-hmm.
save someone because you were willing to bare your soul to that guy. And
Yeah.
you get experience after experience and experience like that, and it's humbling. It's overwhelming, and I go, I would have never been able to do this unless I got the gift to go through what I went through.
Mm-hmm.
And every day I'm like, I say for my family, I go, I wish it didn't happen for their for what they had to go through, because I felt tremendous guilt. But for me personally, if I kind of cut them out of, the trouble they went through in the scare they had, every day I'm just like, how thankful I am that this experience happened, because I wouldn't be where I am today. I still might be lost. I still might be doing the same things I was
Mm-hmm.
before, overworking all those hours and not fulfilling any kind of purpose. And that's sad.
I think you said to me the other day that that accident was the best thing that ever happened to you.
I say that every day.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? It is amazing when we do get on the other side of these incredibly difficult circumstances that we have to go through, that we can look back and say, had it not been for that, my life would have been absolutely, totally different. I'm going to put up your email address. You verify that it's the right address. It's Jason Dennen, the healer at gmail.com. So that if there's anybody listening or who sees this later on in the replay, they want to get in touch with you and ask you questions or share with you or have you share with them, they can email you at this email address here. Let me just say to you, if you ever get back out on the East Coast again, I've got a couple of places I'd love you to be able to share. So let me know if you're coming this way, and we'll try to give you the chance to minister in a couple of places out here. It's a great story.
I would be we can make that happen.
Yeah, it'd be a great story. It's a great story. Let me know plenty of in advance. We stay pretty busy around here, but I've got a couple of places in mind where I think you would just be a real blessing. A couple of men's groups. Men sometimes have a real tough time being vulnerable, and some of them have gone through some pretty tough things, and don't really know how to share it. And so, I think it's a great story, and I love a man who can go through difficulties and recognize that, had that terrible, awful thing not happened to me, my life might be entirely different. I share with people sometimes when I share my testimony, I didn't have a very good childhood growing up, and I'll have people say to me all the time, they say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And my response is, I'm not sorry at all. I don't regret a single thing that happened to me. I'm grateful for it, because it gives me an understanding what other people around me are going through that I would not have had I not experienced some of the things that I did. Yeah. Jason, it has been great having you to share with us. What a fantastic testimony. I'll just say to our listeners, the book is 8 Days Till Sunrise. If you want to order that book, is it available on Amazon or just through you? It is available on?
Yeah, Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com.
Barnes and Noble. Okay.
If you want it, or my website, JasonDennen.com.
Where? JasonDennen.com. All right. I could have put that up, but I didn't think about it. But they can email you for information if they need to. It's Absolutely. A great read. It's a great read. It's very vulnerable. It's very open. And I think that it has a lot to share with people. Well, Jason, thank you very much. I'm going to say goodbye to you at this point. Hang around a couple of minutes while I sign out, and I'll get back to you, okay? Well, what a great time that we've had with Jason Dennen. It was a great story, great testimony, and I think that it's going to be a real blessing to a lot of people. I need to get some things off of the screen here, but it's going to be a great blessing to a lot of people. This has been Night Mike. Don't forget that on Thursday night, I have my good friend Josephus Housey, and he is going to be sharing with us. Josephus is always one of our favorite guests. Great teacher of the Word of God. Grew up in Islam, came to know the Lord through a series of supernatural events, and now is teaching the Word of God. Very, very effective pastor and teacher. Until Tuesday morning at what time on my Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock with Live Mike. I hope you'll join me back in there. I'm going to continue, I think, in some teaching that I started last week from the book of Philippians. But until then, this is Night Mike. I'm your host, Michael Gantt. Thank you for being with us tonight. God bless you.